So I have a question for you. Between these two cars, which one would you rather buy? Would you rather buy this newer car that has 70,000 miles, or would you rather buy this older car with double the miles? This car has 70,000 miles, this LS460. This LS430 has 140,000 miles. Now, we have said this so many times on the channel, be careful with the LS460s, because this is on the edge of the not very good idea to buy for Toyota and Lexus, because they are extremely complicated and their bills for repairs can get out of hand very quickly if you're not careful. And in today's video, I want to show you a prime example of that right after this. Let's start by me sharing with you what brought this 2011 LS460 with a 70,000 miles there on about. It's leaking coolant, and this is something they're notorious for. And here's how this, I call it the LS460 snowball, if you're not careful. Let me show you actually what happened. If you look down there, there is a little cavity that has coolant, and then there's a little cover that looks like that. You see all the pink all around it? They love to leak from this. That's one of their very common things. Very expensive job, because technically, I will just have to say this, technically you're supposed to remove the entire front of the engine, front timing cover, because of the brilliant engineer that decided to do this. There's this little pipe that has two O-rings that goes from the heat exchanger to the front cover. And I'll show you on the car. This goes right in here to feed the water pump. It's a very ridiculous design by Lexus, I must add. And same thing on all these V8s. This is completely different V8 than like Tundra, Sequoia, but it's actually the same design. Terrible design, because you could have had a hose. You could have had something that is bolted on. No, they put two O-rings. So technically, per the manual, you have to pull the front timing cover to do this. And now we're pulling the valve covers, and we're pulling all the fuel system, and we're doing all this just to do that. But you notice we're not doing that here, because we've actually discovered a way where you can, it's very difficult, where you can push the heat exchanger back, put the pipe, put it in at our risk. Here's the risk. If you're not careful, and if you're not taking your time and you're experienced with this, you could roll this O-ring, and then it'll leak even worse than what you started. So what we actually end up doing is put the heat exchanger in very carefully, let it sit, let the sealer dry, connect all our hoses, and leave everything apart. Pressure test it. There are times where it starts leaking again, and we start the job all over again. So this is a very labor-intensive job to do it, and therefore they're extremely expensive to do. But the problem is, this is super common on this. I mean, I've seen engines go because they overheated, because the owner doesn't notice. Because when this coolant leaks, it leaks on a cover. Unless it's a really big leak, you won't see it dripping on the floor. And that's one of the things with these. But wait, that's not too bad. We do this, and we go another 70,000 miles, and we do it again. That's not too bad. But here's what happens with these. These have direct injection and port. This has D4S. So something extremely common, and I don't understand it. Hear me out here. There's 8 injectors. 4 on this side. You can see one of the rails here, and the other one is out. Of course, we'll talk about that. Why? See these injectors? There's 4 of them. So the connectors for the injectors on the driver's side of the engine are black, and you can see these black connectors right here. And the connectors for the passenger side are gray. These two right here. And there's actually 4 of them, but just giving you an example here. Every single LS460, which there is a line of them that get this job done at this shop, the black connectors always break. Every single one of them break. The gray connector, none of them break. So my question is, why did they not put the gray connectors on all 8 injectors? For reasons beyond me, they didn't. And the best part is, when you go order this black connector, you actually get the gray connector. So I don't know what happened there, but they decided, okay, we're not going to do that. But here's what happens on, that's the, I call it the driver's side party. All 4 connectors break and you have to replace every single one of them. That's not a big deal. This connector's a few bucks. Doesn't add much labor. We usually don't even charge for extra labor to do that, if anything, minimal. But here's what happens with the passenger side, because, oh no, this is an LS460. You cannot have things go smoothly. The passenger side injectors love to do something that the plastic on the injector cracks. Yes, half this direct injector is plastic. So here's what ends up happening. The plastic piece of the injector develops a crack over time. And usually if this eventually from vibration it breaks off, and now you will have misfires when it's in direct injection mode. Only the passenger side, every single time. I always warn customers when we get this job that there is a likelihood that we will need to replace an injector or 2. Hopefully not. We've had cases where not, but they are rare. But here's the problem. This injector is $412. And you cannot just replace the injector, because here's the other problems. Go look at the rail itself. So this is the rail, and these are the other 3 injectors, which are fine, which I don't even want to touch them because they don't. We usually just do a little wiggle test on them. If they don't wiggle, we don't recommend them, and these are fine. But here's what ends up happening with these. You replace the one injector, you can't just put the rest of them the way they are. Oh no, that is not a good idea. Because you see these little seals, these Teflon seals? They actually have to get replaced. So now you are replacing these seals. And then there is a fuel line that goes here that also has seals that connects right here. And then the injectors don't just have these 2 seals, they have 17 other seals here. Every single one of these seals, an E-clip and everything, is single time use. You cannot reuse them unless you want to have this car back or not even leave with it leaking everywhere. And we have to do that for every single injector. The new one comes with all the seals on it, but the old ones, we have to take them out, replace all the seals, put them all back, and the seals are very tricky for these. So all this festival is at 70,000 miles. And that is not even the end of the LS460 conversation. This particular one is I consider it the good one, the all-wheel drive model, the suspension. It seems like every week or 2 we get one of them, and the suspension. If it's air suspension, we have major problems because they are extremely expensive. And then the control arms love to go. They're very expensive. Not labor. Labor is simple. You could actually DIY the suspension to a point. And if you get into a rear-wheel drive model, they are astronomical. You can touch $10,000 just to put front suspension on this car, between the control arms and the shocks and everything in between. $10,000 to put suspension on a car that 100,000 miles later, we're back to square one. Same thing. That's just how the LS460 is. But you know what? We started the talk with another car. This here is a 2005 LS430, which is the previous generation. I am very biased toward these, not because I own 2 of them, and not because I think they are the last great big sedan that Lexus made. But as a shop owner, I'll tell you, I work on these exclusive, we see every single day, we see at least one or the other in the shop. We see a lot of these for various reasons. I will tell you this car is older than that one, has double the miles, and guess what it's in the shop for? A timing belt and some brakes. Any leaks? No. Any coolant leaks? No. The water pump we pulled out wasn't even leaking. But if we were there, replace it. That is a good practice. Any other issues with the car? Yes, of course. It's an LS430. It's an old car. Well, this passenger window needs a minute. That's very common with these. The motor gets weak. So it goes up, then it stops. You got to give it a minute, then goes up a little bit, then it stops. Just a weak motor. They are pretty expensive. But that's about it. The driver's side door lock is on its last leg. It's about to go, and this is an Ultra one, so this have the soft close. They all work, but the driver's side unfortunately does work, but the lock is going out. So that's about it. Control arms, they are original. Air shocks, they are original. That's what I always tell you about these guys. Some LS460 owners have commented, actually sometimes called the shop and said that I really dislike these cars and I should reconsider, or I mean, unfortunately some of them were a little bit harsher with choice of words, but that I don't know what I'm talking about when I say be careful with these. Let me reiterate that I care about you more than all these cars and all the shop. I want you to do the right thing. Keep this in mind. There's a point in our life where we want to just buy a toy, buy a big sedan and really enjoy it. And usually these cars will come on your radar because A, they're cheap, and that's usually the biggest red flag. The second thing is you want to have the big sedan, but you don't want to buy the likes of a Mercedes S-Class. I owned one. They are great cars, terrible to own. And then a BMW 7 Series, same thing. Beautiful car, horrible to own because they're just horrendously unreliable. This comes on the radar, it's like, wait a second, this is a Lexus. This should be reliable. And it is when you compare it to an S-Class and a 7 Series or an Audi A8. I mean, if you buy an Audi A8, yeah. But this is reliable compared to these cars, but it's not the most reliable car compared to other Lexus models, let alone the same Lexus model of the previous generation. That's the bottom line with these. You have to know what you are getting yourself into. I see all kinds of owners of LS460s. I see the ones that were original owners. They've taken care of this car. They know it's an expensive car. They are willing to fix them and fix them properly. Look, you can get aftermarket parts, you can mend this and mend that, but at that point, why don't you just buy an ES350? Or if you're on a budget, just buy a Camry. It's a great car, it'll get you from A to B that you can afford. The insurance is not expensive, the car is a nice, reliable car, and life is good. Why are we buying a big luxury sedan if we can't afford it? That's the biggest thing. I see owners come here, they just bought this car with, not this particular car, this is actually a nice car, but they bought an LS460 for $6,000. Well, this was a $100,000 car when it was new. So the repair bills for it will be that of a $100,000 car. But when it's priced at $6,000, there's a very good reason. Because on day one, it's going to need $10,000 in suspension. It burns oil because they never took care of it. The heat exchanger is leaking, and the valve covers are leaking, the fuel pumps are leaking, the suspension is completely gone in the front and back, half the electronics on the inside don't work, including the soft closed door, which are unbelievably expensive. The trunk doesn't latch because the latch is gone, and the list goes on and on and on. You just not only totaled this car, you quadruple totaled this car. And that's the only reason it was $6,000. Folks, when it comes to LS460s, you must have it inspected before you buy it. And if you find one that is too cheap to be true, you are very mistaken. There is no such thing as a cheap LS460, because when you go find a nice one that is well maintained, taken care of, one owner, pristine, full service history, they're usually not cheap. Because people that own these cars, I deal with them daily, and I will share this with you with respect to their privacy. Of course, we're not going to share names here. And if you are watching, most of them are viewers, they take care of them. They will not cheap out on things, but at the same time, they will not sell them. They love them, they take care of them, they know they can be fussy and expensive, but they take care of them. Be careful with LS460s, folks, because this is a prime example. This is a 70,000 mile car. This is 2011. It's beautiful. The inside looks immaculate. The outside, the body, it is immaculate. Yes, the headlights have a little bit of yellowing, but again, it's a 13-year-old car. But this one is immaculate. The owner of this car loves it, takes care of it, full service history. It's been really looked after. But then we have this. If 4 of these break, you're looking at spending close to $2,000 additional to what you're already spending on this. And if you just bought this car for $5,000, $6,000, you just totaled it, basically. And that's just one thing. You haven't even gotten to the suspension. Folks, these cars, you must do a pre-purchase inspection if you buy one. Please, every time I do a pre-purchase inspection, or worse, the worst thing with LS460s, a post-purchase inspection, my blood pressure goes up because now I have to give some really bad news. And I've had some people get really upset. Why are you so expensive when it comes to these cars? Why are the price? Because to fix them right, they are very expensive. And it's not labor, it's parts. The parts are unbelievably expensive for these cars, folks. Please, from me, let's handshake on this. Be careful when you buy one of these. If you've owned this for a long time, then you know already there's nothing new. But if you're going out shopping, you look at one of these, don't buy a cheap one and avoid, this is just a general advice for them once more, avoid the rear-wheel drive ones, especially 2007, 2008, 2009. Buy the most expensive one you can afford. And if it falls within this, then you can't afford this car, and that's okay. There's a lot nicer cars out there that don't have to break your bank to buy, that are still big sedans. Case in point, LS430s. Now, these cars are not exactly cheap to maintain, but the first thing about them is they're a lot more DIY friendly. They are cheaper-ish than the LS460. They don't have kind of disabling problems. I mean, when that thing starts leaking coolant, you can't really, you're going to top off coolant every day, and eventually you forget it one day, it overheats, and the engine is gone. These are more forgiving. They're a lot more DIY friendly. There's a lot more kind of an aftermarket support for them. So if you want to do things on the cheap, you can get away with it more. But with the LS460, not much. You put the suspension aftermarket, still very expensive. 1 year passes, we're back to square one. Everything is clunking again and loose, and that's the problem with them. Folks, I am sorry that I went off a lot on this video about these, but I love you guys too much. Please, be careful with LS460s. Understand that this is more reliable than a BMW 7 Series, Mercedes S-Class, Audi A8, but it is not the most reliable Lexus there is. If you are upgrading from an ES350 to this, be careful and understand that this is kind of in a class of its own. The jump between the ES or the GS and this is a very big jump, and the prices will reflect that of repair, not buying them. Folks, I hope this video was helpful, informative. I hope you learned something new. If you like it, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my videos. Until the next video, folks, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.